Okay, should be on the outside. Yes. You don't have to record just yet if you're not, because I was going to make a quick announcement. I would save an announcement to afterwards, but first of all, thank you everyone for being here. I would make this announcement afterwards, but I might forget, so I want to just say it now. Next Saturday at 3 p.m., we will have a festival here. I guess you could say a festival. And we'll be doing the speaking about the Harinams. So the plan is over time to have different Prabhupada disciples, particularly to come to Columbus and share just different stories they have from Harinam over the years, in particular, way back in the day, to inspire us, to enlighten us to do more Harinam and share their realizations. But also we're going to be filming. So kind of like, I don't like calling it Harinam Memories, but it's kind of like the memory tapes, the memory series of Srila Prabhupada. So devotees will be coming and sharing their realizations and things like that. And we're inviting everyone to come to be a part of it. So that's next Saturday at 3 p.m. So get into the class. So as I turn this on, today I wanted to speak about responsibilities and what our responsibility is in this human form of life, and just share basically some stories from the scriptures to kind of highlight responsibility. So Hanuman, everyone know who Hanuman is, right? He's one of those personalities we say who is, not only is everyone eternally existent, but Hanuman is said to be wherever there's conversations of Lord Ram. He's there. So we speak about Lord Ram, he might appear here. So he's, I don't know the technical term, but he's eternally in his form. So in any case, as a small child, Hanuman had the ability to fly. And so one day he saw the sun floating, flying through the sky, and he thought, oh, that looks very tasty, or very something I can play with. There's different stories say it's a ball or it's a fruit. But in any case, Hanuman was attracted to the sun. And so he jumped and tried to catch the sun, and he's flying through the sky, trying to grab this big glowing ball of light. And being pursued by Hanuman, different demigods got intimidated. What's going on? This child is very powerful, and they're kind of afraid what's going to happen. And so Indra comes, and with his thunderbolt, he strikes Hanuman in the chin, and he flies to the ground unconscious. Basically, they think he's dead. And so Hanuman's father was actually Vayu, the god of air. So seeing this, what happened if someone you cared about or your child was hurt by someone? Naturally, he became very upset. And being the god of air, he said, okay, I'm taking away all the air, all the air from the universe. So there's no wind blowing, no cooling breeze. There's no, His Holiness Rana Maharaj describes it, but we need air within our body. So the body started shutting down in ways that I didn't even realize. But you couldn't breathe. Your lungs are contracting. Your stomach's is tight. Everyone's on the verge of death, and they're begging, please, what can we do to make this better? And so they had an idea to just give Hanuman all of these different benedictions. So they gave him benediction that he couldn't be burned by fire, that he can live eternally, so many different nice boons. But because he's a child, you can't give so many powers to a kid, because, hey, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if your kid is all powerful. So they say he won't remember these powers until the time that he needs it the most. So fast forward some time, he's joined the army of Lord Ram, and they come to the shore of the ocean, in South India, and they need to leap over to Lanka because they hear that Sita is there. And they can't figure out who's going to do it. I can only jump so far, you can only jump so far. They say, well, Hanuman, you can jump. And Hanuman's like, I can't do this. What are you talking about? And they said, when you were young, you had the ability to fly, but you forgot about it. And so they reminded Hanuman of his ability to fly. And so he was able to ultimately leap across the ocean and help rescue Sita. One of the points about this that always sticks to my mind is that when we have children, or if we're just around children, or anyone in particular, if we are discouraging to that person, then they can forget, their abilities, right? So we understand, as Vaishnavas, that we are full of knowledge, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, right? We understand this theoretically, we read it in the scripture, but if we look at our lives, we're like, I don't know if I know everything. We're always afraid of death, and we definitely are not full of bliss. So we have forgotten our position. And this is essentially what happens in the material world. But particularly, I work with kids. Particularly when we're dealing with kids, we have to always remind them of how special they are, right? And the skills that they have, and not discourage them because when they need it most, they may not have a group of people around them to say, hey, you can actually fly to Lanka. So this is what, Srila Prabhupada actually, he's given us this ISKCON movement so that we can all remind each other of our soul's potential and actually achieve greatness, right? Prabhupada, I was hearing His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami said Prabhupada always complained that he had a disease, and this disease was that he couldn't think small. He always would think big. So we have to foster that because if we're constantly telling people that they can't, right? Sometimes if we think about schooling, an example, a teacher has an assignment for a student, and they draw some art, and they say, what is this art? What do you see here? And the picture is of a dog chasing a ball. So the student might describe so many things, and his imagination might be going crazy. And the teacher's like, no, you see a dog chasing a ball. And he's like, no, but I see it. Say, no, you see a dog chasing a ball. So we condition, if you want to do this or do that, you have to think in certain ways. We put them in a box. In the same way, in the material world, it's like, you are this body. You have to do X, Y, and Z in order to enjoy this body because this is all there is. Right? There's some saying like, you only live once, and things like that. Just go out and be crazy, right? Enjoy this body. But here we're teaching, actually, we are eternal, and if we really want happiness, we have to go to the source of happiness. So what is that source of happiness? We have to learn to think outside of the box because we're conditioned to think that, well, I feel like I am everything, the world revolves around me, but I know in the back of my mind that this body is, temporary. So if I believe in God, then God also has to be temporary, right? We have these impersonal things. God can't be a person because then he has to suffer like we have to suffer, right? We can't think outside of the box. So we have to be very careful, especially when dealing with youth. There's a personality, Frederick Douglass, who says that it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men, right? So we're here, we should, see ourselves as children in Srila Prabhupada's, movement and really try to open our minds and absorb, the teachings so that we can actually achieve our highest purpose in life, which is to reconnect with God, right? So when we do come to Krishna conscious and we start to practice our sadhana, we get some power. Now, maybe we don't realize it, but other people see it. Things change. And even people who are, not devotees, but who live certain lifestyles, right? You see a difference. Like you can see, you don't have to know anything about the person. You just see them and there's something different about that person, right? And there's a certain power that comes with practicing austerities. right? But with the great power, they say, comes great responsibility, right? So when you have the power, you have to use it. And what is responsibility? Responsibility is two words, response and ability. So how we respond to a certain situation is based on our abilities. Now, we may have the ability to, for instance, if we see someone in a desperate situation, we may have the ability to give a lot of money. That's one type of ability. But what I'm speaking about is our ability as far as spiritual life, right? How deep is our spiritual commitment? So our response based on certain situation is based on our abilities. So for instance, there's a quote I hear Srila Prabhupada Maharaj say a lot, and I believe I read it in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada quote. It says that, I'm going to get it wrong, but you basically, you judge the greatness of a person by how well they respond to trying situations. Huh? Krishna book? Krishna book, which is also Bhagavatam. Try to trick me. But yes, you know, so that's good. So yes, we essentially our response to situations should be based on our Krishna conscious, our devotion, right? And our surrender to Krishna. And I'm kind of going a little bit around now, but I just thought Arjuna, right? The way he responded to the situation before him. He was Krishna's cousin. They would sit on the same bed together. They would joke and, you know, he'd make fun of Krishna, all these different things. And his response when he was in front of his teachers and his relatives wasn't becoming of a warrior, right? But the difference was that he was able to see Krishna and understand Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Krishna revealed, he was able to understand. There was no argument. You know, he gave so many arguments, but ultimately he surrendered. He said, whatever it is you want, Krishna, you know, that's what I'm going to do. For us, you know, for myself, you know, sometimes it's different. Well, Krishna, but, you know. So our response based on our ability to, you know, in our level of devotional life, right? But Krishna gives us the ability. So again, it comes back to how much we surrender and understand that. Because Krishna, he says that I am the ability of man, right? I am the taste of water. I am the light of the sun. I am the ability of man. I am the sacred sound Om. And in essence, in this verse, he's saying that he is all pervasive. He is everywhere. So there's no need not to surrender, right? And once we make that connection, we actually take that step of surrender, then so many things become possible. We only limit it by our inability to accept the greatness of God, really, right? Because we hear people say that tapping into the human potential, we're only limited by our minds, right? And how much we can do. And that's just the human potential. We can't even tap into that, most of us, you know? I'm looking out and I see so many people who are advanced in so many different fields. And if I apply myself, I could be advanced in the field, but most likely, given the opportunity, I won't even try it. So, you know, when it comes to Krishna conscious, we have to give it a try because, you know, all it takes is one life. We can dedicate one life, right? And we start with one life, that's a lot, you know, for something I don't even, you know. But if we just go, I'm gonna dedicate this one mantra when we're chanting, I'm gonna dedicate this one mantra and really try to surrender. Okay, that was okay, but let me try the next one to go a little deeper. And every time we chant, we just try to do one mantra, whether it's a few seconds. And like that, we just try to do one mantra. When we come to the temple, we do service. I'm going to really try to fix my mind on this service. Or we're home, we're cooking, we're doing something, we're studying the books. Let me really focus on this, you know, moment that I'm doing. And over time, we find that we actually, as Prabhupada says, 24/7, we can become fixed and Krishna conscious, right? And not to, you know, say anything about myself, but even in our dreams, right? We can be preaching about Krishna conscious, right? My mother's like, what is this you're talking about? You're like preaching in your sleep. That was a different time. Now I'm like, more Maya than anything. But but the responsibility and the power, right? So we get the power. If we misuse it, we know what happens, right? But to illustrate that, there's a story I want to share. Most of you may know. So Lord Brahma, he sees, he's Lord Brahma. Most everything is emanating from him in this creation that we see. And being the most powerful, head of the whatever, in his mind, he sees this little boy in Vrindavan, and he's with all his friends, and he's achieving so many miraculous feats, and people are talking about him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Brahma, he wrote the he recited the Brahma Samhita. He's well aware of who Lord Vishnu is, who Krishna is. But in his mind, he couldn't think outside of the box. He couldn't see that here's a small child and God is fully God in this small form. So he wanted to test. Well, if this is really God, let me test. So seeing Krishna one day, he was out with all of his cowherds, boys, and his friends. He actually just turned around 6 years old. He saw and he said, well, let me test. So he went and he snatched up all the cows and all of the cowherd boys, and he took them to a cave and put them in a deep sleep. And after he did that, he immediately went back to Krishna to see what Krishna is doing. How is this little boy? Is he crying? Oh, where are my friends? But he saw all of the cows and all of the cowherd boys there. So he went back, he sees everyone asleep, and he goes and he's like, what's going on? And he starts to see Vishnu within the hearts of all of these cows and cowherd boys. And so for a year, he watched as Krishna went about his daily life, and the cows and cowherd boys went around about their daily lives. And the difference between a yogi with some mystic powers to expand himself, Prabhupada explains, is that, say that I can expand myself to 10 people in this room. Every motion and everything I do is like a robot. It's like a copy. Whereas Krishna can unlimitedly expand himself, and everything is operating individually. So he sees this and he's kind of bewildered, like, wow, this is amazing. And he sees everyone in Vrindavan must be super blessed that they get Krishna as their child. And so for a full year this went on. And eventually he brings everyone back, and he goes to Krishna, he begs forgiveness. And he's explaining to him how I couldn't understand, by seeing this small form, I couldn't understand their potency, but now I do. And he was begging forgiveness and begging to be born simply as a blade of grass in Vrindavan. For people, bless you, for people who know this story, there's two trivia questions. One, now my brain died, so I only know one trivia question right now. One, on this particular, oh no, I know that. On this particular story, Balaram was absent. Who knows why Balaram wasn't there? Birthday, yes. It was Balaram's birthday. It's just an interesting little tidbit. And then also seeing after bringing it, yes.
He's not around on his own birthday.
He was not herding cows on his birthday. He got to stay home. So, but Balaram was fully aware of everything that was going on too. He knew what was happening. But the other thing is when Lord Brahma brought the cows and everyone back, Krishna was eating, and his friends, actually Krishna came back with the cows, and they said, oh wow, you came back so quick. We were waiting, we couldn't eat without you. So for them, it was just a moment in time. So they all sat down and ate, and then when Krishna had to wash his hands, he goes to the river to wash his hands, and so Lord Brahma, he jumps into the river, tries to disguise himself as a fish, and wants to get this nectar from Krishna's hand. But Krishna reaches in with his right hand to wash his hands so that Brahma couldn't get the maha. Why did Krishna reach in with his right hand? So that Brahma couldn't get the maha.
He's challenging him.
No, why did he use he was eating, he used his right hand to clean his hand. So he put his right hand in the water so that no maha fell off.
I didn't get it.
Krishna is eating. Take a prashadam. Pretend you're eating with your hands. Put your hand in the air that you're eating with. Now, when you go to wash your hands, you take the clean hand and put it in the water so that the prashadam off of the hand you were eating with doesn't fall into the river. So why did he put his right hand in the water? Govardhan Hill, left hand. He was using left hand to eat. So sometimes you may see this in a picture of Krishna's eating with his left hand. You wonder, why is that significant? And the lifting of Govardhan Hill with the left hand and pinky. We always eat with the right hand, Krishna's left hand. Just some things to look out for when you look at that art.
So he didn't give Brahma any of the...
No, yeah. But he also ate with the left hand, and people don't know that also. Anyway, so the second personality who misused their power, but didn't come to the realization that, Krishna is God, was Hiranyakasipu. So one may think it's very honorable if someone was to beat your brother to death, that you go and attack them and want to fight. But when Krishna does it, is Krishna. We understand that person's immediately liberated. It's hard to think, because emotions are there. But Hiranyakasipu was actually a very learned, powerful person. He knew the Vedas. He could recite them. He actually was reciting the Vedas to pacify his mother after the brother was killed, to calm her down. So he knew the Vedas. He's very powerful. But his response to this pastime between his brother and Krishna showed that his spiritual ability was not where he pretended they were, despite how many verses he understood or knew. So Hiranyakasipu, he again got a lot of boons because he performed austerities, and he did so much tapasya that the demigods gave him boons, that he was begging for eternal life, that he couldn't be killed. But they're like, we don't live forever, so how can we give you eternal life? And how much time do I have? 12:30?
30 minutes.
Okay, all right. So he was begging, and then so he thought, well, I'm very intelligent, I'm gonna just trick them. So he says, I don't want to be killed by any human or any animal. I don't want to die on land, in the air, in the water, daylight, night. He thought he had all his bases covered, because he couldn't realize that Krishna is not limited by our mind. And when he heard the sound of Krishna coming, the fear that permeated his heart was tremendous. But still, he tried to fight, and ultimately he was defeated. But again, the point was that he had power, he misused that power, right? He didn't have the proper responsibility, or he misused it. There's another story of a devotee who had power, misused it, but ultimately he accepted, what Krishna wanted, right? And this was King Parikshit. So King Parikshit, he was out hunting, and being a king, he's wherever he stops, everyone has to serve him, right? And so he went to the house of a sage, thinking, well, let me get some water and something to eat. So he goes to the hermitage and he sees the sage deep in meditation, and he waits for a moment. The sage doesn't acknowledge him, so he tries to get his attention, and still the sage was deep in meditation, just didn't even recognize his presence. So the ego starts to take over. I know this person hears me. Who meditates like this? Kshatriyas don't have to meditate like the sages do. So his meditation might be to offer a ghee lamp or something like that. He couldn't accept that this person was deep in samadhi. So angered by the lack of respect that he felt he was getting or not getting, he went out and he got a dead snake, a huge dead snake, and he throws it onto the neck of the sage like a garland. So you give the Brahmin the garland, he say, I'm gonna give you a garland, you won't forget. And he threw the snake on him, and he left. immediately he was remorseful because he realized, I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't, Vaishnava like. But it was too late because now the Brahmin, his son, came. And his son had performed a lot of austerities himself, so he became very powerful. But being, a teenager, typical teenager, he was angry immediately. He didn't think, like, well, who is this person? He's like, whoever did this, I cursed them. They're gonna die by the snake. You live by the snake, you die by the snake. So he put this curse out, and then when his father, he came to know what was going on, he told his son, he said, actually this is not what I want, this is not good. He tried to explain to him the role of a king. The king, there's a certain amount of fear that the king has to have, because if the king intimidates criminals, then they don't come and bother people like us, so we can meditate on Vishnu. So it all works together. We're all working. So whatever pious credit we have actually goes towards the king as well. Some of it, he gets a benefit. So you shouldn't have done that. So he was explaining that actually the father has to, and the mother as well, they have to teach the children, and even when the children become adults, sometimes they still have to give them counsel until they can overcome their anger. But not just anger, but overcome sense gratification, right? That's what we're teaching. We're teaching our kids, don't do, drugs or alcohol and, things like that. Some people are like, don't drink or drive. Other parents, I've literally seen parents bringing their kids who are underage to Ohio State University and showing them around and said, this is where you can get alcohol, and this is where you go buy your fake ID, and this person does good things over here. So like, you get your fake ID here, you go here, and they don't card, and they literally tell them how to go out and just be a rascal, right? But that's not what parents are supposed to do. But even telling your kids, not to do these things, that's not enough. That's good, but we understand, as Vaishnavas, that we're supposed to teach our kids how to get out of this material world. Right? I was speaking to one professor, and I had interviewed him, and he was telling me that in Egypt they had a system. So we have liberal arts in college, right? Liberal arts. So where they come from, so in Egypt, they had a system that your real education didn't start, I believe he said 25, maybe 21 or 25, somewhere in the late 20s. So your real education doesn't start until that part. So the liberal arts comes in at that stage, and liberal arts really meant liberation arts. So now we learn about the math, the science, and different things. So now we're learning how to transcend this material world, which another interesting thought just popped in my mind. In the Egyptian religion, or however you want to explain it, they have 3 levels of the soul. And we see the hieroglyphs, right? The writings on the wall, the hieroglyphs. So the main soul, or what we refer to as Atma, is called the Ka. And it is represented by 2 hands raised in the air. And I saw it, I was like, hey, that reminds me of Lord Chaitanya. And the Ka means consciousness, it's the same, it's similar also with the name. Like, that's really interesting. But they taught from birth till death, because they believe that we keep going on after this physical body, you keep going on, so you have to be prepared. So in the same way, we also are supposed to teach our kids, from birth until to death. Like, how do we become Krishna conscious? How do we get out of this material world? It's not enough to be good and do good in this world, but how do we actually escape the samsara, right? So this is what the father was teaching his son after, but Parikshit Maharaj, he accepted, hey, I made a mistake, and I'm not going to go and beg anyone to say, spare my life. I'm just going to accept whatever Krishna has. So his response, because he was a great devotee, his response was, okay, I have 7 days left. Let me go and sit and listen to the Bhagavatam. I don't want to hear anything else. I just want to hear about Krishna and his devotees. And so we understand, we have the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Gita speaks about karma and all these different things. The Bhagavatam just speaks about devotional service, pure devotional service, right? How to surrender, because Krishna tells Arjuna, I've given you everything, now you decide what you want to do with it. Here's his knowledge. You surrender, you don't surrender, it's up to you. So the Bhagavatam takes us to that stage of surrender, right? And we come, and then we hear, the 10th canto, or the Krishna book, all about surrender, that pure love. And then, of course, there's the Chaitanya Charitamrita after that. It's the postdoctorate studies. And for me, the Chaitanya Charitamrita was always, any stories about Lord Chaitanya is always very close to my heart, I guess you would say. Something I always cared about a lot. And even though it's very esoteric, in a lot of ways it seems very easy. Prabhupada writes it in really simple, easy to understand. But if we dive deeper into it, it's actually, so we learn about the material world and the spiritual world of Bhagavad Gita, then we learn about devotional service and surrender, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the practical application of this surrender, right? And I was in Detroit a few weeks back, and I was sharing how when I was in Gitanagari with Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami, how at one point I actually saw like the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all of that came alive. It was like Mother Kamagiri was there, like it was amazing. Even though it was like a sad situation, it was an amazing situation in a sense that His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami was revealing so much. He was revealing so much to even a person like myself, and it was just amazing. I mean, I can try to describe it, but it's okay. Just know it was an amazing moment, and so many people witnessed, and were telling me things, and I was just seeing. It was like miraculous, I guess you would say. But that's the nature of Krishna, right? Even through his devotees, he can reveal himself, right? And he is always compassionate, always loving, and there's no tinge of being controlled by the material senses, right? So we ask ourselves, some people ask, I don't know, some people ask, especially if they're coming to devotees, well, how do you know your God is the God, or whatever, But there is only one God, right? Regardless to what. I remember I had a guest here. I was giving a class, and he asked me a question, and I knew immediately. It was a sweet question, but it was a loaded question. I immediately knew, oh, he has an agenda. So after I spoke, we went out, and he came in and tried to corner me and asked me a lot of questions. And every question he asked, what about that? I just used his own philosophy to glorify his philosophy, but also share our philosophy. He's like, but what about the difference? I'm like, but what about the similarities? How many gods do you know? There's only one God, right? You may call him different names. There's only one God. There's only one supreme God, right? There may be other demigods, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. And for different cultures, they don't understand the concept of demigods. For instance, we have the president, and you have the president's administration. Then if someone from the president's administration comes and tells you, hey, X, Y, Z, you can accept that as good as coming from the president. So the same way, the demigods are like the administration. And people, sometimes they don't understand this, so they think that these demigods are God, and they have their particular demigod that they have attachment to. And Krishna says in Gita that, if you have your particular attachment to a certain demigod, I help you, with your service to that person, and you actually go to the planet of that, or the abode of that demigod. But you should understand that all the boons and benedictions this demigods are giving you are actually coming from me. So there was a a time when the sages were all sitting together and they were about to have a sacrifice, and they were thinking, well, which god, which deity do we offer this yajna to? And there was a debate going back and forth, who is supreme? So Bhrigu Muni was tasked with going to see, well, who actually is the supreme god? And so Bhrigu Muni is actually a son of Lord Brahma. And so he goes to the heavenly planets, and initially he goes to Lord Shiva, and which is his appearance date today, right? Lord Shiva? No, I mean, is Lord Shiva's appearance date today? No. 2 weeks ago? Okay. Yeah. Last. Okay, yeah. Okay. So anyway, so he goes to see Lord Shiva, and when Lord Shiva sees him, he's very excited. He runs to embrace him, and he's like kind of pushing him away. He's like, "You're dirty, you hang around with these dirty people, and you just get away from me. I'm a Paka Brahma," right? And Lord Shiva became very angry, and when he becomes angry, bad things happen. So he runs away, and he goes to his father, Lord Brahma. And when you see your father, you should, be respectful and kind, But when he gets there, Lord Brahma, he's sitting, and he just ignores him, completely ignores him. No, hey father, how are you? He's like, goes to the room and plays Xbox. And so Lord Brahma became upset. How could you do that? I raised you better than this. How can you? So finally he goes to Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu is sleeping. And he runs to Lord Vishnu, just kicks him in the chest. And Lord Vishnu, what happens? He jumps up, and he's like, oh, and he's like, you're here, you come. And he starts apologizing. I hope my chest didn't hurt you. Come sit on the bed, let me worship you and honor you like that. So because Lord Vishnu was showing that he was free from anger, he actually proved that he was the Supreme Lord. Also, in Bhagavad Gita, he says that of the 7 sages are Prajapatis, that Bhrigu Muni, he represents Bhrigu Muni. And I don't know about our deities here, but I know in New Vrindavan, on the Shringadev, you can see the print of Bhrigu Muni. And a lot of deities, apparently you can see the footprint, or sometimes it might be a triangle, some print of Bhrigu Muni. So all the deities wear that. So that's another thing. If you've ever taken darshan in the summertime, maybe you can see. So Krishna is Supreme Lord. That's where I was going with that. And understanding that Krishna doesn't have limitations. Krishna could do anything. So now they are offering bhoga to Krishna. And if you look very closely, you probably won't see Krishna eat it. But you have the faith that, hey, now this is prasadam. So Mukunda Das, in Chaitanya Leela, Mukunda Das, he was a physician to the king. And he has said that he was actually a very well-loved person by the king. The king had a lot of respect for him. And so one day, Mukunda Das and the king were sitting on a high elevated platform. They were sitting in chairs, like equal footing. And one of the servants of the king came with an umbrella or a fan made out of peacock feathers to shade the king. And when Mukunda Das saw this feather made out of peacocks, he immediately thought about Krishna, and he fainted, just like fell off of the platform. And the king cared so much about Mukunda Das, with his own hands, he jumped down and picked him up. He's like, are you hurt? What's happening? Are you okay? And Mukunda Das, he said, oh no, it's okay. I have this disease. It's kind of like leprosy, and sometimes I lose consciousness, and you try to explain it away like that. But the king understood, no, this person, he's special. He's got some ecstasies going on. And he wasn't, Vaishnava, but he understood, this person is definitely surrendered to his God, Krishna. So being in this understanding how much ecstasy he had, right? He had the deity of Gopinath, and every day he would offer bhoga. His wife would cook a large amount. He would offer it to the deities, and then they would have prasadam together. So one day he was called, it was an emergency, he had to go out to see the king, and he told his son, Raghunandan, he says, you've watched me do this offering so many times. Now today, I'm giving you the responsibility to do this offering. So just do like I do, put the boga there, ring the bell, and make your prayers. So initially Raghunandan was protesting, I'm only 5 years old, how can I do this? He said, you can do it, just, I'm giving you this task, this responsibility. So he left, the father left, and here's Raghunandan with the Gopinath deities. And he's crying, and he's asking Krishna, please come and eat. And the boga is just sitting there. And he starts crying. He's like, Krishna, why are you not coming to eat? I'm going to be in so much trouble. My father's going to come home. Anytime it's going to be time for dinner. And you haven't eaten. So finally, Krishna revealed himself. Out of the deity, he comes. He says, I've already eaten. It's like, I'm God. I eat with my eyes. I'm making everything prasadam. He's like, I don't accept that. You have to eat. And he was crying through his tears of love. He was just begging it. And eventually, one point, he even took a stick and he was threatening Krishna. You have to eat. So Krishna, he came and he ate. He ate everything, right? And so Raghunandan was happy. Okay, I've done my service. Then the father comes home and he sees the plate on the altar empty. And he's furious. What did you do? Did you eat that? He said, no, Krishna ate it. He's like, what do you mean Krishna ate it? It's like, you ate this boga. You weren't supposed to do that. I told you how to do it. He said, no, Krishna ate it. Again, remember, he has all of these different ecstasies of love, but he wasn't seeing Krishna like his son was. So he says, we're going to make more boga. You offer this. Do it again like I told you. So he's offering, and he's crying. He's like, please, Krishna, you have to come and eat it. And so what happens is Krishna comes out of the deity again, and he reaches down and he takes a bite of the laddu. And then as he's biting, he sees Mukunda Das peeking, hiding behind the wall, peeking inside. And so he puts the laddu down. So he understood then, wow, my son's no ordinary person. And so one day they were walking, and Lord Chaitanya asked Mukunda Das, he says, so I hear Raghunandan is your son, but clear up this dilemma I have in my mind. Are you his father or is he your father? So Mukunda Das said, actually he's my father because he brought this Krishna, this ecstasy, this love of God. He brought this to our family. And so he's like our guru now. So Lord Chaitanya was very happy with this, understanding. So it doesn't matter if we're, literally a child, or if we're, new, or we're small, or we feel ourselves to be insignificant. We can all do something great. And the reason we can all do something great is because we're all part and parcel of God, right? We have to take limits off of ourselves, take these limits that have been put on us by society, by family, friends, whoever, take them off of ourselves and understand that we can achieve greatness, great things. But we have to ask, what is greatness, right? What is power? What is greatness, right? Greatness is surrender to Krishna. Our true power, our true ability comes from our level of surrender from Krishna. And we can all do that. And how we can make a change in society, a change in our family, and change in, within our community here, is first and foremost is to really try to take to heart Srila Prabhupada's instruction that we are not these bodies, right? If I stop seeing myself as the body, and I stop seeing you as the body, and you as the body, right? We take limitations off of ourselves, we take limitations off of each other as well. There's a story, Srila Prabhupada in London at the, is it the Bhaktivedanta Manor? That's London, right? So they were rushing because Prabhupada was coming, and they had put an altar, and apparently at this place they had big pillars, and either Prabhupada was coming early or they were behind, something. In either case, they were rushing, and so they didn't put the pillars up properly, and they just painted and tried to make everything look presentable. And when they did put the pillars on the altar, He said it took like 4 people for each pillar to put them up. And granted, these were young, teenagers, early 20s. Prabhupada went to take darshan, and the pillars collapsed. And Prabhupada was the only one on the altar. And he grabbed these pillars and was holding them up until people came, and it took several of them to take it off. Now, there's a memory tape when they speak about this, and they speak also about how Prabhupada was offering water to Tulsi and so many different miraculous things. I'm not speaking about miracles. Even though Prabhupada says his miracle was turning hippies into happies, right? We're not really speaking about miracles. I'm speaking about the very easy, somewhat easy thing of just stop identifying your body as yourself. You have these bodies. No one's saying that don't be proud, be proud of being a woman, be proud of your whatever certain thing. No one's saying that. I'm saying don't see this as your all in all. You have this shirt, it's great. You pay way too much money for it. You walk around, you look beautiful, everyone likes it. It's great, If someone throws something on your shirt, don't think, oh, I'm ruined, So the same way with these bodies, you have these bodies, use the body, but don't think that it's who you are. Understand who you are. If we understand that we are pure spirit soul, and even if theoretically we just keep reminding ourselves that, we always try to look at the other person as a spiritual being, part and parcel of Krishna, just that mindset, I guarantee you, that mindset will change the way you look at others and the way others look at you, and it would change the environment around you. It'll change how we interact with each other. So just imagine, in this world, everything is kind of consequence. We do something, there's some other action for it, right? In India, right? India and Pakistan right now are going through some turmoil, right? Prabhupada was describing that when the partition first happened, and you saw, victims here and there, you couldn't tell who was who. Everyone looked the same because they were of the same, some of the same family. Like one brother would take one religion, the other would take the other. So what is the real difference between the people, right? Now, when I was a kid, we had this thing called fake cousins or play cousins, right? There's actually a term people use for it now. I can't remember. It's like a technical term, but basically, you and I, we're neighbors and we like the same thing. So it's like we're cousins. Nobody mess with him. You mess with him, you mess with me. And we see this in sports, right? You get a group of 100 people. They have ordinarily they'll hate each other probably. You put them on the same sports team or the same crowd cheering for the same team, and they're gung-ho, they got each other's support, right? You have this idea of fake cousins, this fake community. The concept is that we are all one, right? But there's always others, right? We're all one, but these are others. What Prabhupada is teaching us is that there are no others. We are all equal because we are all children of Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are all his servants. If we can all live with that consciousness and see everyone as our family, right? Then just imagine how that would change society, right? And so this is why it's important to preach and why it's important to come next week for the Harinam discourse so we can understand the potency of Harinam. But the importance of preaching is so that others can have the same understanding, right? If I think, well, I'm not this body, we're all spirit souls, that's great. What good does that do for you? And how I may not harm you, but how are you growing in your life if you don't understand that? So the urgency of sharing this knowledge is there. We have to share it so other people can know. And it doesn't mean that the world is going to become a utopia, because it won't. Just, this is the nature of the material world. We're here for a reason. And part of that reason is to realize that we shouldn't be here. So this material world is meant to have sufferings, right? But if we can expedite getting people out, then that is to our eternal credit. So that is our responsibility. How we respond to the call is based on how deep our faith is to the philosophy, right? So we have a few moments. If there's any questions or comments, we can have kirtan. Yes?
How do you explain the concept of I'm not my body to someone who is uninitiated in the Krishna practice or philosophy?
You have to approach it based on the person, the individual person. And I would say also just be bold and preach. I remember once I was talking to two little kids, and I was thinking, how can I share Krishna consciousness with these kids? And I said, when I was their age, I was kind of smart. At least I thought I was. So I just started preaching to them as if they were, my age. And they got it, they got it. Initially, I said, well, who are you? And it's like, I don't know. And, they were saying who their name and everything. And they was like, I don't know. And this one gets, am I a dog? Maybe I'm a dog. Maybe I'm God. And I was kind of taken aback, like this little 6-year-old kid saying, I'm God. Yeah, like where did he get that? But they get it. And then especially for a thinking person who's an adult, because scientifically, right, our cells all change about every 7 years. We know that if we look at pictures, we weren't the same as we were kids. I see toys in the store, like I remember I loved that toy. It had to be bigger when I was a kid, or you see how tall I am now. I used to climb on the sink in the bathroom and drink water and my feet would be dangling. It was so much fun, But I'm the same person, but I'm not. So in the same way, the body's always changing. In the same way we give up these bodies, we continue, right? When someone does pass away, they say such and such person is gone, but the body's still here. How can you say they're gone? Because we know intuitively that the body and the self are different. So just according to the person, just find a way that you can explain that, that the body is different. The consciousness, all of that stuff is different. And like I said, according to the individual, you could just share like way. I think everyone innately knows it, but because we become so conditioned to these bodies, we think, and then it doesn't help that people use the term "you're not the body" to kind of delegitimize someone's suffering, right? Because in one sense, Prabhupada says there is no suffering or liberation. It's all within the mind. We're all always connected to Krishna. We just have to remember that. How we perceive things means that we're suffering or enjoying. But that's a high standard for anyone. So devotees should be always compassionate and understand that yes, this person is suffering, but I may understand that their suffering is because of misidentification, or they may think it's something else. So we try to just guide that person and say, well, if you think along these lines, it can help you overcome that. And just give some practical ways, and it helps because when people start to see how Krishna consciousness can be applied in their life, they develop more faith. So hope that answers your question. Okay. So yes, we have real quick.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Just an addition,
Yes.
a little point to that question is if we read Prabhupada's books, and also listen to his lectures and talks, he has dealt with so many people who had the similar questions, and the way he explains, we can probably get inspired by that as well. And in all his books also, he's like on and on, every other page that we are not his body, we are the soul.
Yes.
He gives the example, analogies, the real life analogies. So that's a little point. But I have another question.
Yeah.
And maybe we can talk about it later. But the question is that if people like Brahma, Indra, who are like always absorbing his services to Krishna, and they are in such a high post, if people like those, they are sometimes not seeing Krishna, even if Krishna is in front of them. What are the chances for people like me, or what are the hopes that Krishna is in front of me and Krishna is giving me instructions and I don't understand? I'm like, if people like them are
Prabhupada is your hope. We can talk about it later, but that's essentially it boils down to that. Prabhupada is your hope and your guru. So yes. So thank you all for tolerating me, and we can stand for kirtan. Hare Krishna.
Nityananda Ki.
Jai.
Now, Thomas,